All right, you guys, as you can see by the thumbnail, I got another one like the other one. And like I said yesterday, this one right here is a banger. Well, all these stories are bangers. And I got to shout out my boy for giving me these stories because all these stories are good stories. But this story right here, it makes you ask yourself, like, damn, where's the loyalty at? How are these guys getting away with this out there on these main lines? You know, what's going on with these criminal organizations? So this story right here is a continuation about a previous story that I just told you guys about. It involved three Mexican mafia members, Psycho from Santa Monica, Serio from Pacas, and Spider from Canta Rana. It was also a story about a paisa that was known throughout the prison system for selling cell phones. He had cell phones on lock. He had been on several level 4 yards in the past, and every time he hit a yard, that was his hustle, selling cell phones. As I told you guys about in that story, initially, they didn't know how he was bringing in the cell phones. They were trying to find out because they wanted to take advantage of his resources, but nobody could find out how he was getting them in. I don't know how long they were neighbors, 2 months, 6 months, maybe a year, who knows? But at first, when they were neighbors, Psycho would go to this paisa like anybody else whenever he needed a cell phone, and he'd buy a cell phone from him. But over time, they would eventually develop a relationship. And this eventually led to them establishing a level of trust between each other. At some point, the paisa obviously felt comfortable enough to approach Psycho and proposition him with a business arrangement. The paisa basically tells Psycho, check this out. I have a way of bringing in a bulk amount of cell phones. The paisa tells Psycho, you know, if you got people out there that are willing to get the cell phones, to package them up, to put them in a box the size of a shoebox, and drop them off somewhere, meet my people out there on the streets. To Psycho, this was a golden opportunity to make money, a lot of money. If you think about it, because at that time, cell phones were going anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000 a pop. It just depended on what kind of phone it was, how scarce they were out there on the yard, and also who was bringing them in. He could have probably put anywhere from 70 to 80 phones inside that shoebox. So this was a big opportunity for him. Later on, it would end up coming out that he had a cousin working in the prison, the paisa. He had a cousin working in the prison. As I told you guys in one of my previous stories, if you're somebody that has family that lives in close proximity to the prison, a wife, an old lady, these are the type of resources that are essential that you're going to need in order to lock something like the cell phones down. So the paisa had a perfect arrangement. He had family that lived right outside the prison, and he had a cousin that was actually working in the prison as a CO that was willing to bring him in. You guys remember the story. The cousin worked the metal detector station by the vocational buildings. He was the one that whenever you would go into a vocation, you'd have to strip out, kind of like an airport security. You strip out, put everything in a box. They slide it through, x-ray it, and then you'd walk through like a doorway that had a metal detector. As time went on, Psycho, Serio, and Spider, they would end up concocting a plan to try to get the paisa out of the way. They basically wanted his resources. Once they got, you know, a good taste of how good this route was and the potential of it, they started to concoct a plan to get the paisa out of the way. What they didn't know is that the CO was related to the paisa. And as soon as they hit the paisa and got him off the yard, the CO heard about it, found out about it, and immediately put in to get moved to another part of the prison. He wasn't having no part of that. He was smart enough to figure out what their game plan was before they had a chance to proposition them, and then he cut tread before that happened. They did 2 or 3 runs without incident, and once Psycho was ahead of the game, that's when he decided to cut in Serio and Spider. The paisa was charging Psycho 5 bands to bring in that box of cell phones. However many cell phones Psycho's people could fit in that box, he would charge them 5 bands. Not only that, but the other thing is when this paisa first approached Psycho about bringing in the cell phones, he made it clear. He was like, you know what? I'm not bringing in nothing else but cell phones. I'm not bringing in no clavo. I'm not bringing in no weapons, nothing like that. Just cell phones. If they can fit 80, 100 cell phones in this box, I'll bring it in. He said, just make sure, you know, when they package it up real good, but it's got to be the size of a shoebox. But what Psycho did is, knowing that his people were the ones that were packaging it up, he figured, you know what, nobody's going to open this box. When it comes in, the paisa's not going to open it. My people are packaging it up, so they can go ahead and just put the clavo in there, and nobody's going to know about it but me. So he had a separate arrangement worked out with Spider and Serio to bring in clavo. And then he was charging them double of what he was paying for the clavo on the streets. So this arrangement, it ended up working out for a while. You know, the boxes were coming in, but the way that Psycho had it arranged, where when the box would come in, the Paisa would hand him the box. His hands were the only ones that touched that box. Psycho would go back to the cell. He'd open up the box in his cell. He'd take out all the, the extra clavo that he put in there, some extra cell phones, and then, whatever he wanted to tell Serio and Spider that, came in, that's what they knew about. Whatever they didn't know about, they didn't know about it. But at some point, Spider and Serio became suspicious. They felt like there was something suspicious or fishy about this arrangement that Psycho had with the Paisa. Not only that, they were trying to figure out, like I said, how he was coming up with all this extra clavo, how he was coming up with all this, these extra cell phones. He was balling out of control. You guys got to remember, cell phones at that time were going anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000. So, they were probably selling them for $4,000. They could even sell them for $3,000. You got 80 phones. Do the math. They were making a killing out there. And cell phones, everybody needed them. They're a hot commodity out there. So because Serio and Spider became suspicious, at one point, they knew when the box was coming in. They knew exactly what time, what day. So they posted up on the yard and they waited for the Paisa to come through. And when the Paisa came through, they approached him and they let him know, hey, we'll go ahead, we'll grab that. Psycho knows about it. That's our brother. You already know what's up. So don't trip. We got this. Even though Psycho, had told the Paisa, he was adamant about, look, don't never give this box to nobody else. My hands are the only hands that touch this box. So he gives him the box, and Psycho and Spider, they go back to the cell. They obviously bust the box open. They see that there's a shitload of clavo in there. There's a bunch of cell phones and whatever else Psycho was getting in. So now the cat's out the bag. Well, before they had a chance to confront the Paisa, Psycho concocts a plan to put two crews together and to have the Paisa hit, to have him hit along with like 6 other Paisas that were like his crew. So at the end of the day, Psycho basically got rid of the Paisas to cover his own tracks, because he didn't want Spider and Serio to know what he was doing. He didn't want them to know the details of the arrangement that he had with the Paisa. He knew that if the Paisa stayed on the yard, there was a good chance that they'd end up hearing about it. They were already suspicious. They probably end up, trying to get at the Paisa, try to get the truth out of him. So, from that point on, Psycho was like, you know what, I got to get these fools off the yard. So this is where this story continues. I just wanted to go give you guys a quick synopsis of kind of like what happened up until this point. So after the Paisas, after they get removed off the yard, obviously the prison goes on lockdown. They probably went on lockdown for a week or two and did control feeding and all that good stuff. This was a time after they stopped doing those long lockdowns, the 6 months, the year lockdowns. They probably did 2 weeks because this involved 2 different group segments, the Sureños and the Paisas. But what ended up happening as a result of this right here is right after the Paisas ended up getting hit, they came and snatched up Psycho. They snatched him up, took him to the hole, and then they shipped him out to another prison. Now, one can only speculate about, what triggered them to come out there and snatch up Psycho. I personally believe that somebody either told on Psycho or the administration probably felt like, you know what, because Psycho has the influence out there on the yard, that he was instrumental in putting the green light on the Paisas. You guys got to remember, it's common practice for the administration on different yards to make it their business to know who's got influence, and who's out there calling shots on these yards. For one, if there's somebody out there that's too heavy-handed, there's too many people getting hit, it's chaotic out there, somebody's doing too much, that's the individual that they're going to end up rolling up. Kind of like what they did with Psycho in this situation. Another reason they like to make it their business to know who's running the yard is because if there's a major incident out there, they like to know, they like to know who they can go to maybe resolve some type of incident, maybe to get at somebody that has a little bit of influence out there and tell them, hey, you know what, check this out. If this continues, this is going to happen. If that continues, this is what is going to end up happening. We're going to come through. We're going to tear up all you guys' shit. You know, a lot of the times, like when I would be in San Quentin and I'd have the keys over there, a lot of the times the administration over there, they knew I was running that prison. And what would happen was whenever something would happen, somebody would get hit, or they felt like we were doing too much, or one of the homies over there did something that would reflect back on the household, I would end up catching the flack about it. So that's the reason why they like to know, you know, who's got the influence out there, or just somebody that they can go to and get at and say, hey, you know what, if this continues to happen, if your people continue to do this right here, this is what's going to end up happening. These are going to be the repercussions right here. You know, whenever I was in San Quentin and I'd be running that prison, a lot of the times, if one of the homies did something that would reflect back on all of us, I would be the one that would catch the flack for it. Or, you know, they'd send an officer up there by my cell, and the officer would say something like, hey, you know what, check this out, man. I know, you know, that you got a little bit of influence here. I'm gonna let you know right now, if your homeboys keep doing this or they keep doing that, they keep disrespecting that CO down on the second tier, whatever, this is what's gonna happen. We're gonna come through and we're gonna tear up everybody, all you guys. So that's kind of like why they like to know who's got the influence and who's running the yard, so that they have a go-to person. Either way, when Psycho got shipped out, Spider and Serio continued to establish that yard. However, if these two learned anything from the dilemma that they had just went through with losing Psycho and, you know, hitting the Paisas, it was basically that they had shot themselves in the foot and that they had put themselves at a huge advantage. Not only for social reasons, to reach out to loved ones, your wife, family, but also to conduct mafia business. You can't network, you can't stay tapped in if you don't have the ability to communicate. And I'm not talking about, you know, through shooting kites or things like that. These guys need to be able to communicate on the streets. They need to be able to communicate in other prisons. It's an essential part of communication. So these guys were basically in damage control mode, you know, from losing Psycho and then from losing their phone plug. They were trying to establish another phone plug, and they were trying to rebound. Originally, they had visions of killing the market. They wanted that Paisa's plug. They wanted that route that the Paisa had. They wanted to get him out the way, slide up under that CO, and then basically take over that phone market all for themselves. That was the plan. What they should have did was to establish a phone plug prior to removing the Paisa. But you guys got to remember, Psycho was the one that had the Paisa removed. He needed to get him off the yard immediately. Otherwise, Serio and Spider probably would have elected to keep that Paisa out there, to keep the cell phones coming in. But Psycho wasn't willing to take that chance. In the meantime, another one of their quandaries that they would eventually have to deal with is the fact that Serio, he had a huge drug habit. I mean, a lot of Mexican Mafia members, a lot of NF members, they all have drug habits. But Serio, he had a huge drug habit, and it was getting worse as time progressed. For the most part, when Psycho was there, Serio kept it under wraps. He did it, you know, occasionally here and there, but, you know, he didn't get sloppy with it. He would end up getting messy after Psycho ended up getting taken off the yard. And his thing was meth. That's, you know, that's probably worse than heroin. You know, a lot of Mexican Mafia members, a lot of NF members, old school, the older guys, a lot of them are into black, carga. They like heroin. But Serio, his thing was meth. You know, it didn't help that the MA had an open door drug policy, and that getting loaded together seemed to be a part of that lifestyle. From what my guy told me, Serio was described as being like a younger Mexican Mafia member. He was young, he wasn't really seasoned. He wasn't, you know, fully baptized within that lifestyle yet. He was still learning. He wasn't a seasoned member like Spider. If the Mexican Mafia had a category system, he'd probably be somewhere between a category 1 and a category 2. But again, he wasn't somebody that seemed like he was really well-versed in Mexican Mafia politics. I believe the term, he was a millennium big homie, was even used to describe him. So anyways, while they're dealing with the fallout from losing Psycho and losing their cell phone plug, again, Spider was the senior of the two. He had been around longer. You know, he carried himself different. His name carried a little bit of weight in the system. He was well known and well respected within the system. The only thing that Serio really had going for him was that he was younger. And because he was younger, he connected with the younger Sureños. Those are the ones that he had a lot more influence with. But anyway, Speedy was known as the type of individual that was out there on the yard, always hustling, always had his hands in things, always trying to, broker deals out there, trying to push dope, trying to push cell phones out there. He always had his hands in the mix out there on the yard. He was always hustling out there. And that was something that Serio liked about him. So ultimately, when things started picking up on the yard, Speedy would actually be the one to establish another phone route. He ended up establishing a way of getting phones back in again. So things started picking up. They started getting cell phones in, they're getting Glavo in, and Speedy was instrumental in that. I don't know what his pipeline consisted of. I don't know if they had a CO that was compromised. I don't know what they were doing, but cell phones were coming in. But again, the only thing that really started to hinder the progress of Serio was his drug habit. That's what kept him from taking it to the next level. He had a lot more potential, but every time he started, tweaking on meth, that ended up hindering his progress. So what Serio started using Speedy for was to shortstop everything that was going on out there on the yard. Whatever was going on, other people that were slinging dope, other people that were bringing in cell phones, whatever their hustle was, he had Speedy get at those individuals, shortstop them, and he started taxing those individuals. He wanted a piece of everything that was going on the yard. If you were out there slinging a little bit of dope, if you were just trying to make a little bit of money selling cell phones, if you had your own little hustle, Speedy would come and get at you on behalf of Serio, and he taxed you. And this was on top of everything else that was already going on. Even though Spider and Serio had everybody kicking in a percentage of everything that they were doing out there on the yard, Serio still had them kicking in more on top of that. But Spider, he didn't know about none of this. This was something Serio was doing on his own. So this is the way that it kind of worked. Spider had his crew, his entourage, and his people, and Serio had his entourage, his crew, and his people. But what Serio started doing was he started pressing Spider's people. He started getting at Spider's people that were under Spider, and he started telling them, hey, look, on top of what you're giving Spider, I need you to go ahead and kick in this right here to me. However he was doing it, monthly, weekly, however it was, he gets at Spider's people, and he tells them, Spider's aware of this. I'm giving you a direct order right now not to tell Spider nothing. You're not to bring it to him. He doesn't need to be bothered with this. But we're struggling out here on the yard, and we need to cover some more ends. So I need you guys to, on top of whatever you're giving Spider, go ahead and kick this back to me as well. But again, here's the kicker. Again, he led these guys to believe, Spider's people, that Spider had signed off on it and that he was on board with it. He told them, all of his crew, go ahead and kick in this amount right here. He basically told them, look, I'm going to have Speedy, whether it's monthly or weekly, again, I'm going to have Speedy come and collect this on top of everything that you're giving Spider. Obviously, when Serio told this to these guys, it sounded fishy, and they obviously started questioning it in their minds. But this is a big homie. So none of them dared to defy, his directives. He told them specifically, do not tell Spider nothing. He doesn't need to be bothered with it. So, I'm giving you a direct order. You're to kick this amount of money in extra, and, you're not to say nothing about it. And, even though I'm sure some of them were like, man, this sounds dirty right here. I think he's doing the okie doke. Nobody said nothing. They complied with his directives. The fact that these individuals were designated as being specifically assigned to Spider's crew, this was a ballsy move for Serio to do something like this. But, again, he was a young, big homie. And from my understanding, he had gotten himself in other situations kind of similar to this in the past. But anything that, Spider's crew was toting out there on the yard, anything that they were involved in, Serio basically had his hands in it. He was right in the middle of Spider's business. And this was all being done to feed his own habit. This right here was being done because he had a bad drug habit, and he needed a way to feed that habit. So this is what he was doing. And this is a serious undertaking. Misappropriation of organization monies is a form of treason. Something like this is an automatic death sentence, at least as far as the NF goes. I don't know how the Mexican mafia does it, but when something like this happens within the NF, this is like blatant stealing right here. This is as dirty as you can get. Stealing money for your own personal need. taking advantage of other people's money like this, and basically stealing under the cloak of your status as a member of this organization, that right there will get you whacked fast. No questions asked, take you to the back, straight firing squad. Seriously though, that's about as blatant as you can get. So anyways, all this is going on for a cool minute. It's all going on for a cool minute. Nobody's saying nothing. Spiders, all his guys, they're kicking in the Serio. They're paying them. Everybody's happy. Serio's making his money. They're getting in Clavo. And, like I said, Speedy was the one that was instrumental in opening up this new phone route. So they're waiting for phones to come in. Speedy supposedly got phones coming in. They're on standby. They're waiting for them to come in. And, as all this is continuing to go on, Serio, allegedly is continuing to shrink. This guy was supposed to be a huge cat when he was in Pelican Bay. He was ripped up, yoked up. He was a big guy. But once he started doing all this meth over there in Calipatria, he started to get the raccoon rings around the eyes. He started losing a lot of weight. He started shrinking up. He started having crazy mood swings. All the telltale signs were there. But the point when everything really started to come to light was not when Serio started taking advantage of Spider's crew, when he started stealing money from him and he started taxing his guys. But, when things really started to get bad is when Serio started to tax and abuse his own people. When you start abusing your own people, that's when they really have no other reason to continue to be loyal to you. When you start burning them and you start abusing them and there is no more loyalty, why are they going to continue to show you loyalty? But the loyalty was starting to fall wayside. A lot of them were starting to get tired of the way he was talking to them, the way he would address them. He continuously broke character out there. He would get mad. He was going through his little mood swings when he didn't have dope. That's when, he would be out there on the yard, on a rampage, barking at cats in front of everybody, just straight abusing his authority. At one point, he starts taxing them more. He starts hiking up the numbers. And now it's really starting to become evident that, this dude's doing some dirty shit. He's doing some foul shit, but nobody has the balls to speak up and address it. Nobody wanted to bring it to Spider's attention because essentially what you're doing is politicking against a big homie. You're taking a chance because you got some NF members, and I'm sure you have, Mexican mafia members that might, you might go to them and tell them that their brother's doing something, and they might actually end up getting mad at you. Hey, why you throwing my brother under the bus like that? I don't give a fuck. The fact that you're telling me, that's all good. But why are you throwing my brother under the bus? And you're taking a chance of something like that happening. So I'm sure a lot of them wanted to say something to Spider, but at that point, everybody's just kind of like looking around at each other, probably expecting the next guy to say something. But as more time goes on, they're growing more and more tired of, the things that Serio's doing out there. And again, I think the breaking point came when Serio started verbally disrespecting them, just calling them out of their names. Motherfucker this, motherfucker that, punk ass bitch this, punk ass bitch that. When it got to that point and he actually started to threaten some of them with physical violence, that's when, there were some cats that were like, you know what, this ain't cool. Something's not right about this right here, and something's got to be done because, it can't continue like this. This is not how big homies are supposed to act. This guy's breaking character. Everybody knows he's using, but this goes on for a while. So what ends up happening is Speedy from Pacas, he ends up finally getting the cell phones in. They finally come in, and keep in mind it had been a while since there were any cell phones out there on the yard. Nobody else out there was, getting them in. The cell phones were going for ridiculous prices at that time. The ones that were out there, they didn't have access to them. So, it had been a long time since, cell phones had come in. And a lot of them that they had were lost. They got lost in raids and cell searches. So when they came in, those that had status, the brothers and some of the other fellas out there on the yard that are involved in the politics, that are in that inner circle, those are the ones that had access at getting some of those cell phones first. Of course, when they come in, Serio's on it. He's on top of it. He approaches Speedy and he tells him, hey, I need a cell phone. I need you to hook me up with the cell phone. I need one like ASAP, like yesterday. So Speedy gives Serio a cell phone on the strength. He gives it to him. He's like, hey, here, big bro. Here's a cell phone. He gives him an iPhone 13. They weren't even out yet. But he gives him he gives him one of the best phones, and he tells him, look, it's brand new. This is straight out the box. It hasn't been used yet. All you got to do is activate it. Just get it hooked up. So he gives the phone to Serio. Serio's happy. He's got a phone now. So Serio, he gets the phone. He ain't even listening to Speedy. He grabs the phone. He's in a hurry just to get back to the cell, get that phone hooked up so that he can start reaching out to his people. But here's the thing. Serio gets back to the cell. He has a hard time hooking the phone up. The phone's not working. He's trying to hook it up. He tries to put money on it, tries to have his people out there pay the bill, and he can't get the phone to work. To me, it sounds like, he's never activated a phone before. That's what he's having problems with. He probably thought, you know what, I can just drop some money on this phone and it's good to go. But, obviously he had never activated a phone, and that's the issue that he was having. So now Serio's living. He's in there. He's probably throwing combinations on the wall, kicking his mattress, kicked one of his chanclas off the tier. He's pissed off. He's like, man, what's up with this cell phone? How come I can't get it to work? And his thing now is he gets pissed off at Speedy. He blames it on Speedy. He goes out to the yard and he tracks Speedy down the next day. And he comes up to him and he's like, hey, homie, I need to get at you. Come here, bro. So Speedy's like, he trips out on him the way he comes up on him at first. He's like, damn, why he's getting all aggressive like that? And, he's got all his homies right there. Some of the guys that are considered to be like Speedy's crew, they're right there. But, Serio's getting at him aggressively. Hey, check this out, man. Let me get at you. Come here. Check this out. So now he's mad at Speedy. He tells Speedy, he's like, what the fuck's wrong with you? He's like, hey, motherfucker, why you give me a fucking cell phone that don't work? Why would you do some fucking shit like that? You trying to play me? He's like, motherfucker, you better give me a fucking cell phone that works. But Speedy is somebody that has known Serio for a while. He's known him for a long time. Again, they're both from Pacas. And, I'm sure he was pissed off that he's getting addressed like that. But he bites his tongue, he keeps his cool, and he's like, hey, big homie, he's like, I told you when I gave you the phone is brand new. It's brand new. You got to activate it. You can't just, it doesn't just work. So Serio says, no. I told you I wanted a phone that fucking worked. I want a phone that I can just open it up, hit the button, and the motherfucker works. I didn't know nothing about how to fucking activate it and all this other stupid shit. And, again, Speedy tells him, he's like, big homie, he's like, man, I told you, bro, a lot of the phones that I got, they were all brand new. I didn't get no phones that had been activated before. My people went and they hit a store out there and all these phones were brand new. They all need to be activated. So, Serio, he don't like it, but there's nothing he can do. I guess Speedy at one point, he tells him, look, I'll show you how to hook it up. I'll show you how to get it activated. Don't trip. We'll get it going by tonight. He's pissed off. He's breaking character. As more time goes on, the more he's addressing these guys, with disrespect. He's now breaking character. Every time he comes out to the yard, cats are staying away from him. They don't want to be anywhere near him because, they're feeling his wrath out there. He comes out to the yard just laying in the cats, and he does it in front of everybody. So there's a lot of dudes that were trying to stay away from him at that point. They all know he's getting loaded. You can see it in his character. You can see by looking at him, he's losing a lot of weight. So, everything's starting to come to a boil at that point. So basically the misunderstanding between Speedy and Serio was that the phone wasn't activated, but the damage was done at that point. Serio had called Speedy out of his name, had disrespected him. There were a lot of other Sureños that were around that were like, you know what, they had pretty much got to the point where they were fed up with it. They had had enough, and they were finally to the point where they felt like, you know what, let's just take a chance. Let's let Spider know, because this shit right here is going to end up going bad. Something's going to end up happening where either he's going to take off on somebody's going to lose their career. This dude's reckless right now. So what ends up happening is that situation right there, it kind of opened up everybody's eyes. Everybody, seen it for what it was. The blinders came off, and they know, it's finally time to let Spider know what's happening. So you know what they did? Spider's crew and Serio's crew, they all get together. They all get together, and they got together for the purpose of talking about it. They felt like, we should all get together and kick this around and figure out the best course of action, the best way to approach Spider and to tell him what's going on. And once they all got together and they all found out, they started talking and found out a little bit more of what was going on. This guy was getting charged. This guy was being made to pay this. And they're like, nah, you kidding? They found out that Spider's crew was getting charged as well. It wasn't just Serio's crew, but he was also taxing those individuals. So, at the conclusion of that meeting, it was decided that they were going to go and tell Spider. They were going to soon, the next day on the yard, they were going to pull Spider over. They were going to approach him and they were going to tell him, look, this is what's been going on. This is what's happening. And everybody was basically going to lay it out for him. Again, I can't emphasize enough that they probably, they were leery about telling Spider because, like I said, essentially what they're doing is they're politicking against Serio. They're not only putting him on blast, but, they're letting another brother, his brother know, what he's been doing. And, those are serious accusations. But from everything that I heard about Spider, he was a level-headed individual. He was older. He had a lot of experience. And, he had a rational way of looking at things. So, these guys, eventually they felt comfortable enough with bringing it to Spider. And Speedy, he led the pack. He was the one that was more involved with Serio. And he's the one that essentially got at Spider and told him, hey, brother, we need to holler at you on the yard. It's about something that's very important. It's urgent. It's something that needs to be addressed like right now. So the next day, Spider comes out and you got both crews out there. Both crews were out there on the yard. Everybody got together and, they sit Spider down and they're like, hey, you know what? This is a difficult situation. We're sorry that we're even bringing this to you. And, we're leery about even exposing this right here, but it's something that has to be done. Things are starting to just go bad right now. And, it's to the point to where some of us are actually worried about losing our careers. And, Spider's like, what are you talking about? What's going on? So they all start laying it out for him. Each and every one that, had encounters with Serio, the ones that, he was taxing, exactly what he told them not to tell Spider, to keep it under wraps, and that Spider was on board with it, that he had signed off on it. He let him know about, everything that he was doing out there. And Spider was livid. He was pissed off. From what, my boy told me, if you looked at him long enough, you could see smoke coming out his ear. Now I'm bullshitting, man, but he was livid. He was pissed off. I would be too. If I had another NF member out there on the yard and, that happened, I would be highly upset. I'd feel disrespected. And that's what Spider felt. He felt like, he was being disrespected. He was being played. He was being played like a fool, that, Serio had no respect for him. And that, to go as far as stealing his money right up under his nose, that's like the ultimate disrespect. I'm sure that Spider probably felt like getting one of the biggest bone crushers out there and whacking Serio right then and there. But he kept his wits about it. So when all this came out, and Spider's listening to these guys tell him everything that's happening out there, everything started to make sense to Spider at that point. He started to what, that makes sense now. This is why that didn't happen. This is why this happened. This is why he came up with this. This is why he said that. So everything started to fit together like a big puzzle now. Now Spider's really pissed. And what he does is he gets both crews together. He gets both of them together and he tells them like this. He's like, check this out, little homies. He's like, this is what's going to happen. So tomorrow when we come out for yard, he said, and then tomorrow, when we come out to the yard, I'm going to call Serio over. And like I said, I want you guys to just fall back. And I'm going to call each and every one of you one by one. And I want you guys to lay it out in front of them. Don't be scared. Nothing is going to happen to none of you. I'm giving you my word that nothing is going to happen to anybody on this yard. If anybody got anything to worry about, it's Serio. So tell him what you told me today. I need you guys to do that. So, these guys, they obviously they weren't looking forward to this meeting the next day, especially Serio's crew. They knew they were going to have to throw him under the bus, and they knew that, from that point on, things were going to be different. Once this situation blew over, some of them were probably worried about, repercussions or being treated foul by Serio, or maybe Serio was going to start gunning for him and looking for reasons to start getting rid of him. These guys were in a bad position. A lot of them felt like, this is all bad right here. They wanted to get off that yard. Anyways, this was a tense situation. Everybody was on pins and needles for the rest of the day. But, they carried on. That night they went back to their buildings and they did their normal routine. They took their showers and went back to their cells. And in the morning, they went to chow, did their normal routine, and then they came out to the yard. So what ends up happening is when they come out to the yard, Spider, he calls Serio. He flags him down. He's like, hey, he flags him down. And, Serio comes within, range. He tells him, hey, brother, I need to holler at you. And, he tells his crew to fall back. Serio sees, so he tells his crew to fall back. And that's when Spider confronted him. He confronted him about everything that both of the crews had told him. And from what my guy told me, Spider told Serio, he's like, with all due respect, don't speak. Let me say what I got to say, and then you can speak. He didn't want to give Serio any opportunity to try to wiggle up out of this. He didn't want, Serio to say anything that he probably didn't want to say until he was done laying everything out. He wanted to give him enough rope to either hang himself or to figure out, what, I probably, it's probably better for me to go ahead and be honest in this situation, because this is not a good situation that I'm in right now. So, Serio, he respects Spider as one of his elders, as a senior member, and Spider starts laying it out to him. He's like, look, this is what I was told, and this is what such and such said. And one by one, he calls everybody over there. And he tells him, tell him what you told me yesterday. So every one of these youngsters that, went over there with Serio and Spider, they all laid everything out. Everything that they had told Spider the day before, they laid it all out. And, they basically told Serio, you taxed me. You told me not to tell Spider. You gave me a directive not to tell him. You said he was on board with it, that he signed off on it. It all came out. Everything that he was doing. Taxing people, disrespecting them, calling them out of their names, using dope, everything came out. So, in the end, there were only like four guys that were really still behind Serio. There were only four of them. Because when you looked around on Serio's side, you looked over there and you seen like Serio had 4 shooters. Those are the only guys that were really still behind him. The rest of his crew were, standing with Spider's people. And when you looked over at Spider's crew and everybody that was over there, he had like 16 or 20 shooters. So Serio, he kind of looked at everything. I'm sure all this was playing out in his mind while, he was being thrown on blast. He was listening to everything that Spider was telling him. And at the end of the day, what do you think happened? Serio ended up confessing to Spider. He's like, you know what, brother? I've been fucking up. I've been using. I was stealing from you. It's this shit that I've been on. This meth habit, it got the best of me. Look, I've lost weight. You know what I mean? There's times in my cell, that I know I'm fucking up, that I gotta clean up, but it's got a hold on me, man. I would never do that under any other circumstance. I would never do something like this, man. It's thrown me out of character. I'm guilty of everything that these guys said, straight up. That's probably the smartest thing that Serio did the whole time he was there. That was probably the best move that he made, confessing, owning up to his shit. When Spider, heard Serio own up to his shit, I'm sure he was still pissed off, because it still is what it is. This is somebody that's been stealing from you. He was, doing a lot of dirty shit. He discouraged a lot of Sureños out there on the yard. I'm sure he was still upset. But Spider, being the stand-up type of individual that he was, being an older, older Mexican mafia member, what he did was he called all, both crews over again, and he was like this: my brother confessed that he's been fucking up. He admitted everything. So, it's going to stop. It stops right here. It's not going to happen no more. None of you guys are going to feel any repercussions. He's not going to treat you any different. He's on thin ice right now. It's going to stop right here. I'm going to help him with his habit. He's not going to be using no more. None of that shit's going to happen. A lot of things are going to change from this point on this yard. So, I appreciate you guys, for coming forward. This actually is going to help him. Otherwise, who knows how this might have turned out. But this stays right here. You guys are not to go, if any of you end up getting transferred out, you're not to go talk about it with anybody else. You're not to go, gossip and spread propaganda about it. It's going to get resolved right here. It's a household issue, and we're going to deal with it in-house. So when it was all said and done, what Serio didn't know is that Spider had a nasty bone crusher on him. He had a nasty bone crusher on him. And if Serio would have lied, if he wouldn't have confessed, he wouldn't have owned up to his shit, Spider was going to run that bone crusher through his neck. He told both of the crews out there, there was a few of them that were in the know, that he told, if he lies, I'm going to kill him on the yard in front of you guys. I'm going to give him every opportunity to go ahead and man up, to hold his nuts and to, own up to what he did. But if he doesn't, it's going to be the end of his career tomorrow. So, Serio, he didn't know how close he came to getting killed out there on the yard. I'm sure, Spider knew what he was doing. He was an older Mexican mafia member. He's somebody that had been around. And from everything that I've heard about this individual, he was a savvy individual. He was somebody that had a lot of respect. So I guess the moral of the story, or the lesson in all this right here, is, the addiction. It just goes to show that even though, Serio was, a Mexican mafia member, that, he's bound to different codes of conduct, and that he's part of this criminal organization, he gets on the dope, and the dope, it has him breaking character. It has him just on a reckless mission out there on the yard. From that point on, when he started using and his habit started to get bad, he stopped caring about anything else but to try to get some more dope. He was willing to steal money from another Mexican mafia member right up from under his nose. That's crazy. It's crazy when I think about it, when you put it in perspective, it's just crazy. But again, it was his habit. I don't know Serio. I don't know how he is when he's not on the dope, but supposedly, at one time when he had size on him and he was programming, obviously he was, a Mexican mafia prospect. So he must have some type of, intelligence to himself. He must have some type of qualities that they seen in him that, that he fit that mold. So, me personally, even though, I had my issues on the streets when I used drugs, using drugs in custody, in prison, that's a whole nother animal. That's crazy. You're out there on a level 4 yard. There's a lot of politics going on. You got opposition out there. There's a lot of shit going on out there. You need to be on your toes when you're out there on those kind of yards. I couldn't see myself, using meth, something that I've never even tried meth. I've always, my thing has always been that black. But I've seen people on meth before, and I've seen what it's done to them, and it's just crazy. I couldn't imagine somebody being out there on a yard, staying up for 5, 6, 7 days at a time, being twacked out and going out there and basically just digging themselves a hole like he did. Serio's lucky that he was out there with, a guy like Spider that gave him the benefit of the doubt. That's something that we all don't get. So he got lucky. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this story. I'm going to try to put out Inner Demons hopefully tomorrow. I got one out for you guys early this morning. Anyways, my boy should be calling me in a little bit to give me another story. So hopefully I'll be able to put that one out for you guys tomorrow. Like I said earlier, continue to drop your comments. Let me know what you guys think about, these stories, or what you think about this story in particular. Some of the details. What do you think about Serio, what he did? What do you think Spider should have did? Did he do the right thing? Anyway, with that being said, again, I appreciate all the comments. I appreciate all the positive feedback, everybody that's been tapping in. We'll try to do it live in the next day or two. We're going to keep the content coming. And with that said, this your boy B, and I'm out.